hated working there. I think that most people can say that night shifts suck. Being a college student doesn't help either. I missed most of the good parts of my freshman year because of my job, leading me to develop a case of FOMO. My shift at the warehouse started at midnight, and I got off around 8 a.m. to go immediately to classes, then back to my dorm to crash, waking up just before work. Now, it wasn't every day, but I worked there a lot, which means I didn't make a ton of connections with people at college. It didn't bug me too much, but I also wanted to have a good college experience, so it always stayed in the back of my mind. Now, I know the obvious question of why I didn't quit and get a job somewhere else with more flexible hours. Well, it paid too much, as simple as that. Any other place is less than half of what I got paid at the warehouse. My job consisted of inventory, basically. They were a freelancing warehouse company, kind of for renting, primarily advertising towards businesses. Now, I didn't just have to take inventory and leave. I was also a general, hands-on-deck man too, for whatever needed to get done. Consistently, I would come home with back pain and aches. It was a month ago when I quit. I never want to go back. Working at a warehouse, there were some characters that I would be associated with. Most were just middle-aged men with a wife and kids back home, but there was one person who stood out among the rest. I don't remember his name, or I guess I didn't care to. He started working a couple days before I quit, and I think the first day my coworkers got the same feeling I did. For one, his appearance. He looked malnourished, really tall and lengthy, 6'4" or 5 I'd have to say. His skin was suction sealed to his facial bones, showing off his cheekbone definition. His skin was the same consistency as your fingers when you swim for more than 2 hours. He didn't give off any smell at all, like not even deodorant or cologne. He could have been anywhere from early 20s to late 40s. The first time I was talking to him, he gave me the impression that he was very socially disabled. I wouldn't say awkward, I would just say he lacked social awareness and social cues. He was a new loading guy, but everyone there kind of did the same thing. Before each night, we had a briefing on what needs to get done and who's working with whom on what. The previously mentioned lengthy guy was tagged with me on cleaning out an old section of a bankrupt laundromat. The warehouse was massive and it had several different sections. The building could usually hold up to 20 business storage slots at a time, each one varying in size. This one was a smaller one, located approximately a 5-minute walk from our break room, a pretty long way from everybody else. I didn't care that I was with the new guy. This had been his third day. We reached the room with a big garage door. A truck backed into it, where we had to load the rest of the forgotten business. Cardboard and wooden boxes lined up with images, prints of laundromats, carpets, computers, and desks on the outside, each box varying in size, unorganized. I brought my headphones with me, but I think the coworker had other plans. He reminds me of an annoying guy on a plane talking when you're trying to sleep.
So, how long have you been working here for?
It caught me off guard. I didn't expect him to make small talk, but even more, his voice caught me off guard. Not so much his voice, but the way he said sentences. It's like if somebody had read the entire dictionary but didn't know how to spit out a sentence properly. Oh, it's been a couple years for me. I lied. I'm not sure why, maybe because I wanted to seem more intimidating. He didn't respond, followed by a very awkward silence you find at a reunion. It continued for a minute, as we separately picked up small items, then placed them onto the truck, and prepared the bigger items to go in the back. I couldn't help but notice the sound of his creaking bones, like an old door hinge in dire need of WD-40. I kept catching him looking at me. He wouldn't stare, and when I noticed in the corner of my eye, I looked over and he looked away. I didn't mind it, he is new after all. I thought he was just looking at me for what to do.
So, where do you live?
In town. I'm trying to give the least information possible to this guy for my own safety.
No, like, where do you live?
The tone of his voice still creeping me out. I don't know, west of town? I phrased my answer like a question, wondering if it's enough to make him happy. This is when I truly started to see the social disability. I was a little creeped, but more just annoyed than anything. There was another moment of silence as I continued minding my own portion of the work.
Do you know people?
Weird question. Sure. I think he got the message from my dry response and my seeming inability to look over at him. I don't care if I was being an asshole, I just didn't want to make small talk. After a long, painfully quiet couple of hours, we got finished. I had a slight feeling of sympathy for the guy. I didn't do anything about it, I just kept it in my mind. I always loved it, walking outside and seeing the sun rise, complemented by the cool air taking over my lungs quickly. Quickly, I noticed that parked directly next to my 1991 Honda Civic, effectively named Shitbox, was a truck, not much nicer than mine. I didn't recognize the car, but I assumed it was the new guy's because no one else parks next to me. I looked into the driver's seat of the black early 90s Highlander to see him sitting there. He wasn't fumbling with his keys or checking his phone. No, he was writing down in a notebook placed on his dashboard. He looked up and looked like he got caught in with his pants down. I saw him throw the notebook onto the passenger seat, and the roaring sound of the car came to life, headlights effectively blinding me. He reversed out of the spot and drove off, going much faster than anyone should in a gravel parking lot. Immediately, I became suspicious. Sure, none of my business what he was writing down, but why would he bolted when he saw me? I got in my car, I went home, and I went to bed. It was 4 p.m., my normal waking time. My roommate, who I don't see much, wanted to get some food, so we went to Denny's. We were sitting in a booth overlooking the parking lot through the window. As my roommate and I were having a competition of whose ex is the biggest prick, a familiar car pulls up into the Denny's parking lot. I don't really believe in coincidences, so I immediately knew who it was. The same black Toyota Highlander from earlier this morning. My coworker. I didn't point it out and continued our conversation. Dude, remember when she tried to steal my dog? My coworker spat. Oh shit, yeah. My mind was in two places at once, reminiscing about the situation months prior, as well as watching the car outside, wondering what he was doing. The car pulled into the parking spot right next to mine, and I seemed to make a facial expression because my roommate picked up on it. What? Is something wrong? He also turned to the window. That car. I pointed. That's my new coworker. Oh, sick. No, that's not sick. He's weird. I think he wrote down my license plate earlier. That was my only explanation to myself of why he would be here now. The black one? Yeah, it's the black one. He must have seen us looking or pointing, because as quickly as he did this morning, he did it again, skirting out of the parking lot, making a scene. Dude, what the fuck was that? My roommate was as confused as I was. Whatever, I'll deal with it later. While trying to act cool, I was freaking out on the inside. Was he following me? Was he planning to do something to my car if he didn't see us watching me? Safe to say, I didn't want to go to work tonight, contemplating calling in sick. It was 10 p.m., 2 hours before I had to clock in, dreading every moment of my existence. Since Denny's, I had kept a small box cutter on me, hoping I didn't have to use it. I tried to call my boss, but it appears I had already enough sick days. Fuck. I pulled into the parking lot and I saw his car from far away in the same parking spot. I had the box cutters in the right pocket of my cargo pants as a sense of false security. My mind was racing. I didn't know how to fight, and he was much taller than me. But I also had to calm myself down and remember that there would be other people there too. I just hoped I wasn't put with him to clear out the laundromat section again. We made some progress, but we still had 3 shelves to go. I walked into the break room filled with small amounts of chatter and stale room temperature coffee. I saw the guy. He was sitting on his phone in the corner. I looked over and saw that we were still working together. My heart sank so far into my chest I felt like I could never get it back out. Midnight hit, and we both made the quiet walk over to the furthest storage unit. We didn't speak, we didn't look at each other, we just walked for the 6 minutes in silence. What terrifies me the most is the entire time he had a grin on his face, which I saw from the corner of my eye. We made it in. I was so alert, keeping tabs on where he was in the storage unit at all times. I think he knew something. He saw me shaking, constantly dropping boxes out of my hand from the moisture on my palms. He started approaching me. Are you okay? He sounded even more robotic than yesterday. Yeah, I'm good. I was so fucked. I was trying to hide the fear, but it seeped through my voice. He stepped closer. Let me help you with that. Instead of picking up the box like I thought he would, he grabbed onto my wrist. His touch was like ice, his hands freezing. Don't fucking touch me! I didn't know what to do. Was I overreacting? I need to get out. He stepped back. I looked at his face, and my heart filled with horror and dread. He didn't react. No, oh, I'm sorry, or oops, my bad. He just stared, like the most uninteresting thing was happening. He wasn't even looking at me, he was just looking head on. I didn't know what to do. I couldn't be in the room with him anymore. I ran to the lockers, I grabbed my shit, and I bolted. I ran into the emergency exit, sounding the alarms in the building. I ran as fast as I could through the parking lot. I heard him running behind me, trying to catch up, but as tall as he was able to outrun him. I got into my car, fumbling with the keys. I was crying. I saw him. He was right there next to the driver's seat window, tapping on the glass. "Let me in." He had no emotion. He was a husk. I stepped on the gas so hard that the rocks kicked up behind my back tires on the gravel road. I skidded out of the parking lot and onto the main road, looking back to see if he followed me, banging on the steering wheel and screaming to myself. I'd never been this terrified in my life. I got home, called my boss. I'm done. I didn't go to class for the next few days. All I could do was sit in my bed and effectively overdose myself on melatonin. What would have happened if I didn't run? It was a week later. I saw him again. I was leaving my dorm and looked down to the very end of the hall. It was him. He knows where I live. He didn't move. The same lifeless emotion on his face as earlier. I went back inside and I crumbled to my knees. It's been a week since then. I don't know who else to tell this to, so I'm telling it here. I could call the police, but, legally he did nothing wrong. At the best, he could go to jail for stalking, but I don't even know if there'd be enough evidence for that. I heard from one of my coworkers that he got fired. Apparently he had misconduct with another person. I guess it wasn't harassment because it appeared to be an accident, but he got fired nonetheless. They saw on the cameras that he had harassed another coworker. I've been going to class this last week, always keeping some sort of weapon to protect myself. I hope I never see that black Highlander again. I always loved my wife's green tea. It had this balance, earthy but soft, sweet but not sugary. She'd brew it each morning without measuring, just by instinct, and hand me the cup like she was handing over a spell. It was our little ritual, the one constant in our lives. I used to joke that I didn't marry her, I married her tea. We were close, solid, quiet. You could say, perfect, and I wouldn't have corrected you. But perfection has its cracks. You don't notice until your reflection starts looking back at you from across the street and doing things you can't explain. It started with a sound on the balcony. Just a quiet knock, like something had shifted. I got up to check, thinking it was wind or a loose chair, but what I saw turned my stomach cold. Across from our 8th floor apartment, on our balcony directly opposite ours, stood me. Not someone who looked like me, but me. My face, my shirt, my stance. And next to him, next to me, was my wife. He had her by the wrist. She was struggling, crying. I couldn't hear them through the glass, but I could see her mouth forming my name. And then he shoved her, just like that, over the railing. Her body vanished into the alley below. And that other me stared at me, dead in the eyes. I didn't move, I didn't scream, I couldn't. When I finally came to my senses, I ran through the apartment shouting her name, but she wasn't there. Not in the kitchen, not in the bed, not even in the bathroom. Her shoes were still at the door, but her phone was gone. I checked the balcony, empty. I looked down. Nothing, no body, no blood, no impact. I told myself I'd fallen asleep watching a movie, that I dreamt it, hallucinated, something. But the knot in my stomach didn't go away. I needed to calm down. I did the only thing I knew how to do. I tried to make her green tea, but it wasn't right. It was bitter, off, like ash and medicine. I searched the kitchen, opening drawer after drawer, hoping to find the ingredient she always used to bring that perfect sweetness. In the back of the silverware drawer, I found a small green glass bottle, no label, cold to the touch. I opened it, just the faintest whiff, and I knew that was the flavor. That was what she'd been using. On instinct, I added a few drops into the tea. I slipped it, and immediately my tongue was numb. Not sweet, dead. That wasn't a secret ingredient. It was poison. Slow. Subtle. Familiar. I stumbled to the bathroom, splashing water on my face, nearly threw up in the sink. That's when I heard the keys at the front door. She was back. My wife walked in like nothing had happened.
Where were you?
I demanded.
I saw you fall.
She tilted her head, confused, too confused.
You must have been dreaming.
She said. But when I confronted her about the tea, about the bottle, about what I tasted, her face changed. She didn't deny it. She just stared at me and said too calmly,
I didn't think you'd ever look. I was gonna leave you anyway. I'm in love with your best friend.
something inside me cracked open. Rage filled the space where love used to live. We argued, loud, fast, venomous. I don't remember all the words, only her voice, cold and satisfied. Only the moment where I lost myself. I grabbed her. I dragged her to the balcony. She screamed, kicked, called me insane. I could barely see through the fury. I lifted her, her nails scratching my neck. Her eyes widened in pain, in disbelief. And just before I let go, just before I did the irreversible, I looked up, and there he was, across the alley, on the opposite balcony. Me. Not the one I'd seen earlier, the terrified version. Pale, shaking, watching with wide, horrified eyes, shaking his head, mouthing something I couldn't hear. Don't. That's what I think he was saying. Don't do it. His expression was all fear, all panic, like he'd seen this before, like he knew. And in that 1 second, I wasn't the angry husband, the betrayed man. I was him. I was watching myself about to destroy everything. But I knew it was too late. My grip loosened. Her body fell. Silence swallowed everything. I dropped to my knees. Now I sit here, staring across the alley, waiting. Because I know what happens next. He'll see me soon. And he won't hear a word I say. We were supposed to be looking for the missing girl. Her name was Quincy, 14 years old. We wandered away from the campsite to try and find a phone signal and never came back. It was 2 days before they called for volunteers. Now, I didn't know her and I didn't know her parents, but I showed up anyways. Around here, that's what you do when a kid goes missing. You help. They assigned me to a grid section past the old fire break. I was paired with a buddy of mine, Joel, a retired firefighter with a permanent squint and a voice that sounded like it came through gravel. And there was Owen, this kid I didn't really know, early 20s, quiet, but polite. The search was slow, just woods, quiet and unremarked at first. But after a while, the sound started feeling heavy. There weren't any birds, nor bugs, even. Just the sound of our boots cracking old twigs. Nothing else. That's when we found this grove. At first, I thought the trees were just unusually pale birch. Tall, thin tusks, but when we got closer, I stopped walking. Something about them just didn't feel right. It wasn't like any bark I'd seen before. It wasn't rough at all. Actually, it was incredibly smooth. Joel stepped forward and placed a hand on one of the trunks, and a second later, he recoiled and stared at his palm like he'd touching a hot stove. It moved. It moved, he said. I stepped closer and reached out myself. When my fingers touched the surface, the tree gave just slightly, like there was something inside of it that rose and fell with rhythm. Slow pulsing, breathing. I backed away instantly, and Joel said nothing after that. He just pulled out a strip of red tape and marked the trunk I radioed in. They told us to continue on. They said they'd send someone to check later. We kept walking, but I didn't think any of us were really searching after that. That was unreal, not natural. But there wasn't a moment more we wanted to stay there. That night, Joel sent me a photo he'd taken earlier. Close up at the base of one of the pale trunks. I had to look at it for a long time before I understood what I was seeing. There were toes. Human toes. Bent and distorted. Nearly grown over the trunk itself. But still unmistakable. 5 of them. Curled and fused into the bark like they'd been molded from the inside. We both froze. Unable to comprehend if that could even be real. I hardly slept that night. There was this pressure in my chest. A sheer panic I couldn't rid of. The next morning, they shut down our search grid entirely. Forensics came in with biohazard suits. They didn't tell us much, but I managed to speak with one of the lab techs later. He was standing behind the trailer, smoking a cigarette, with both hands shaking. "It's human," he said. "The tree. Or what you thought was a tree." He smirked and flicked the cigarette. Made of a couple compact bones. The bark, his skin. Real skin. Even had marrow inside. I couldn't speak. My mind was running circles, adrenaline crashing with the panic in the way that made nothing make sense. He nodded. "We got the DNA results," he added quietly. "Quincy, and 3 other missing persons, from going back years." That was all I needed to hear. Joel and I left the staging site that afternoon. No one came with us. I honestly don't remember when he rejoined us, or whenever he left. He was just there, walking behind us, or made our way back to the village. We didn't speak. It was that specific kind of silence, one that no one wanted to break. Just walking, and just needing a drink. Something to reset reality. About a half an hour into the walk, we saw another tree. It was standing alone in a clearing, pale and still looking wet, like it hadn't finished drying yet. The surface shimmered lightly in the light, and I reached out and touched it before I could stop myself. It was warm. Not sun warm, it was body warm. There were strips of tissue hanging from the upper branches, swaying gently like red leaves. At the base of the trunk, half buried in soil and flesh, the torn shoulder patch. "Police issue?" Joel muttered, stepping closer. Then I heard something. It was a whisper. Very close. Close enough to make me turn around even though I didn't want to. I turned, and he was gone. Or rather, he wasn't there anymore. In his place was something bent, long, limber. Crouched low on all fours, its spine arched unnaturally. Its legs were twisted, bent backwards like a broken animal. Its jaw was split and curled open towards the top of its head, revealing a grin that didn't belong on anything human. Eyes were pit of red light, wide and motionless. Golden scream. His body just rose, like something had gripped him invisibly and pulled him upward. His ribs bent outwards, one by one, tearing through his skin. His spine snapped with the sound of dying twigs. Flesh peeled back in silent strips. Every movement was methodical, precise. Bones twisted out and curled forward. Muscles and tendons folded into the shape of roots. His body reshaped itself into something tall, white, and still. He wasn't dying. He was becoming. I turned and I ran. I ran straight back to the village. I didn't stop to look back. I didn't stop to listen. By the time I reached the first house on the outskirts, my legs were numb. My chest was burning and I collapsed into somebody's yard. I don't know who helped me or how I got inside that night. I dreamt. At least I think it was. I felt my body being dragged against something cold. My limbs wouldn't respond. I was fully awake, completely paralyzed. I couldn't even open my mouth. I couldn't scream. I felt everything. The pain came slowly, not sharp. It was deep and spreading, like something pulling apart the pieces of me from the inside. My legs twisted inwards. My spine curled. My chest began to open. I remember the sound of each bone's cracking, one by one. I remember the warmth of the ground swallowing my back and the pressure of roots slipping over my skin like fingers. And then I woke up. I was on the floor next to the bed, drenched in sweat. My arms ached. My ribs felt sore, like I'd been curled into myself for hours. It was the most vivid dream I've ever had. One I knew would haunt me for the rest of my life. Joel, I whispered to no one. I told myself it was stress and night terror, my brain trying to make sense of what I'd just seen. Kenneth, the old man who owned this house, came up to check on me. Said he'd heard me shouting. I guess he wasn't the only one who helped me in. I didn't know him well, but at that point any face felt like a lifeline. I asked if I could call the police. I needed to know what happened to Joel. They said they found more trees. And yes, one of them matched his DNA. Then I asked about Owen. There was a pause on the line, and the voice asked me to repeat the name. I did. The quiet kid. The third one assigned to our group. Another pause.
We didn't send you out in threes. You were paired with Joel. All teams were in pairs.
He asked if I was feeling okay, that I'd been reported missing, that Joel was last seen with me. Asked if I could tell them where I was. I was confused. How long was I out? I hung up. I walked downstairs slowly, my knees shaky, one step at a time, barely able to walk, like my limbs were limp, like I couldn't fully control them. My mind was racing. My stomach felt hollow. And I saw it. Kenneth was floating in the middle of the living room, his limbs twitching, bending. Bones cracked, flesh tore open. He collapsed backwards onto the floorboards as if something burrowed through him, reshaping him from the inside out. He didn't scream. He just wept quietly. Then he whispered something. And then something whispered right behind me. I turned. The thing. It was black. Tall. Long-jawed. Covered in pale fur. Its eyes were deep, hollow, and red. Fixated on me. I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. I can only feel the pain spreading again. Deep, familiar pain. Like my limbs were being torn and rearranged. My chest tightened. My spine curled. I saw blur through the tears. And all I could do was watch my life come to an end. And I saw it. Shrieking. It was morphing. It was changing. Its eyes were now human. On a human face. Attached to a human shape. A shape I now recognize inside of my mirror. It was my own shape. I didn't believe in any of it. Not really. Demons, rituals, salt circles, all that stuff just felt like folklore. Old cautionary tales wrapped in mystery. That's probably why we laughed when Dev pulled out a weird old book. It was a Friday night. Me, Dev, Jave, and Alina were hanging out at Jay's house. His parents were away for the weekend, and we were deep into one of those nothing nights. Lazy, tired, half buzzed, and half bored. Dev had been digging through a box of his dad's things in the basement when he found it. This heavy, leather-bound book with cracking edges and pages that looked like they'd been stained by time, or something worse. The Lesser Key of Solomon. Most of it looked like junk, faded Latin, weird symbols, dramatic warnings. But Dev turned to one of the marked pages, finger-tapping an underlined name. Oberus, he said. Says here he tells the truth, protects people. One of those good ones. Che laughed. A chill demon? You gotta be kidding me. Alina rolled her eyes, already over it. I don't know what made me say it. Was it boredom, too much beer, or sheer curiosity? But I said, let's summon him. We weren't being serious. It was just something dumb to kill the time, get some laughs, maybe get a few clips to post later. We lit a few tea candles from the drunk drawer. Sat it on a circle on a cold concrete floor, and Dev read the words out loud. We skipped most of the steps. We couldn't be asked to go through all of that and waste time. No protective circle, no fancy herbs or incense, just candlelight and bad decisions. And nothing happened. That just made us laugh harder. It was fun. We bashed each other, tried to scare each other a little bit, and ultimately shrugged it off and went to go play Mario Kart. But after about 20 minutes, the basement door creaked open. Jay swore he shut it tight, but those doors were iffy. He went and locked it. We still got some laughs, saying maybe the chant succeeded. Then we heard a soft knock upstairs. Just once. Soft enough to be intrusive, but sharp enough to stop our talking. Then came the sound of a pan hitting the floor in the kitchen. Jay went to go check, came back frowning. The pan wasn't even near the edge. It was pushed off, probably the damned cat. I remember Alina saying something like, "Must have been the draft," but I wasn't convinced. The air felt heavier. Not cold exactly, just wrong. I didn't feel at ease anymore. Something felt off. Then something slammed into the wall behind us. Loud, deliberate, hard. We all jumped. Even Dev looked rattled, and he was the one that didn't get pushed off the rails easily. I saw that he looked freaked out, terrified at this point. He grabbed the book again and started reading more closely. His brow furrowed, and the rest now realized this wasn't a prank anymore. If summoned without circle or seal, he may wander freely. Though not harmed by hand, he grows stronger through fear and time. He may torment, mislead, and draw harm from the world to you, to reveal the truth. At the final hour, when shadows become flesh, he may touch, he may take. Protection lies in the circle of salt and in the light. He cannot cross either unless broken. If he does not possess his soul until daybreak, he shall return to his realm. Jay's laugh came out sharp and short. Nice, real funny. And we all heard it. Breathing. Right next to my ear. Cold. Uneasy, damp. And very much there. I freaked out, turned, expecting something. Someone. Nothing. Dev's voice cracked when he shouted, "We didn't bind it! It says right here, no binding, no control." More noises upstairs. Then a bowl popped in the stairwell. Alina screamed. Jay cursed. I didn't say anything. I was trying not to lose my shit. We scrambled. Dev tried Googling binding rituals. Yes, funny, but not so funny when we faced something we didn't understand. This was supposed to be fun, a joke. We realized all too late that it wasn't. I ran upstairs and grabbed a bag of salt, and we poured it around us in a shaky ring. All of us standing close now, barely speaking, undecided if we should watch around us or each other. Then the lights started dying. One bowl, then another, pop, pop, pop. Always just outside the circle. The darkness was creeping closer. With each pop, we knew we were in real danger now. I held up my phone flashlight. It flickered, but the battery was full. It shouldn't have. Dev read again, barely above a whisper. "You may not touch the souls unless it sips from light to dark or into dream. Don't fall asleep," Alina said, her voice breaking halfway through. "I don't think that'll be a problem. I doubt anyone could sleep." It was now 4:25 a.m., and we just had to make it to sunrise. Time went slow, but it moved. The next hour, I don't even know how to describe it. There was a scratching sound. Not consistent, just enough to keep you from forgetting. A chair skidded across the floor by itself. Something moved in the corner just outside the light, but when I looked, it was nothing. Just gone. Just wasn't. Something happened that made us aware that we were indeed not safe. The gas. It hit all at once. Sharp. Sour. Alina had started coughing. The burner upstairs. Someone had turned it off. But we've all been downstairs. We didn't want to leave the salt circle, but we couldn't just sit here and let the house fill with gas. We decided to go upstairs together, slowly. One person always shining the light on the others. Like kids playing flashlight tag in a haunted house. The burner was on, full blast. The knob was gone, yanked off. Jay found the valve under the counter and turned it off with a pair of pliers. I took the handle, shoved it into my hoodie pocket. Then the phone light flickered on again. We ran like hell. We held a grip onto each other as we just ran back into the basement, into the salt. We didn't talk anymore. We just breathed. Shaky and quiet. I remember looking out of the small basement window and seeing the sky start to go that weird bluish gray. Just barely. Just enough to believe it might end. It might be over. Everything was silent. No more noise. No more draft. Nothing moved. Everything was peaceful. Just that nice warm feeling of the first sun rays on the skin. That sunrise came slowly. It always does when you're watching it. When it finally did, I felt like I'd been holding my breath for hours. Alina stood up, stiff. It's over, right? Dev was still sitting there. He hadn't said much in a while, then suddenly he stood up.
I'm going home.
He said.
What?
No, wait, Dev.
I'm tired. I just want to sleep.
He said something else under his breath. I didn't hear it, but Jay froze.
Hold on, what did you say?
Dev looked confused,
Nothing. Good night.
and then he left. We didn't follow. We started cleaning. We had a lot to clean. The mess, candles, broken lights, the salt circle. Just trying to return the room to something normal. Then Jay said quietly,
The circle.
We turned. He was staring at the floor. There was a break. A line in the salt where someone had stepped in it too fast. A single heel mark that had smeared the edge. A gap. And Dev had been sitting right near that spot. We just stared at it. Didn't speak. Didn't clean it. Didn't want to admit it was there. And Dev hasn't answered any of our calls since. We keep telling ourselves he just needs space. That he walked out this morning and went home. But none of us actually saw him leave. I just remember the sound at the door. And when I think back to that moment, I can't shake this feeling. What if Dev never made it out of the basement? What if we let something else walk away? My new neighborhood has only one rule. Never, under any circumstances, help a lost pet. The house was a steal. That should have been the first red flag. A 3-bedroom craftsman with a wraparound porch for less than the cost of my cramped 2-bedroom apartment. It was quiet. Secluded subdivision called Maple Creek, where the lawn was impossibly green and the neighbors waved with all 5 fingers. The HOA president, a woman named Carol with a smile as bright and hard as a porcelain doll's, met me on my first day. She handed me a welcome basket with a bottle of cheap Chardonnay and a single, laminated sheet of paper. "We're so happy to have you, Mark," her eyes crinkling in a way that didn't seem genuine. "We're very relaxed here at Maple Creek. We don't have rules about lawn height or fence color. We only have one." She tapped a perfectly manicured nail on the laminated sheet. On it, in a large, friendly font, were the words, "Rule number 1. If you see a pet that appears lost or in distress, do not approach it. Do not feed it. Do not let it into your home. Go inside, lock your doors, and ignore it until it has gone." I laughed, thinking it was a joke. "What? Are the raccoons organized crimes around here?" Carol's smile didn't waver. "It's not a suggestion, Mark. It's the only thing we require of you. It is for the safety and harmony of the community." Her tone was light, but her eyes were deadly serious. It was the first time I felt a chill in the warm afternoon air. For the first month, it was perfect. Quiet, peaceful. I almost forgot about the bizarre rule. I'd seen people walking their dogs on leashes, cats sunning themselves on porches. They were clearly owned, clearly where they were supposed to be. The rule seemed like a weird quirk from a bygone era. Then came the storm last night. It was a real gully washer, with thunder that shook the windows and rain that came down in sheets. It was around midnight when I heard it, a sound that cut through the noise of the storm. A pathetic, high-pitched whine. I peered through the living room window. Huddled under the eave of my porch, shivering and soaked, was a golden retriever. It was beautiful, with big sad eyes and a leather collar but no tags. Every time the thunder cracked, it would press itself against my door and cry. My heart broke. The laminated card was sitting on my counter, and Carol's words echoed in my mind. Go inside, lock your doors, and ignore it. But how could I? It was just a dog, a scared, lost animal. What was the worst that could happen? I'd be breaking some stupid arbitrary rule from a power-tripping HOA president. So I did. I opened the door. The dog practically fell inside, shaking and puddling onto my hardwood floor. It looked up at me with such gratitude, nudging its wet head into my hands. I got a towel and a bowl of water, and it immediately settled down on my rug, letting out a content sigh. I felt a wave of relief. See? It's just a dog. I fell asleep on the couch, watching TV. I was suddenly woken up a few hours later by a sound that wasn't the storm. A slow, deliberate knock on my front door. The rain had stopped. The dog on the floor lifted its head, let out a low growl, and then, strangely, trotted to the door, its tail giving a single lazy wag. I looked through the peephole. Standing on my porch was a man. He was tall, impossibly tall, dressed in a neat old-fashioned suit, like a door-to-door salesman from the 1950s. He was smiling, a wide, friendly smile that showed too many teeth, all of them perfectly straight and white. I cracked the door open, my hand still on the chain. Can I help you? Good evening, the man said, his voice soothed and pleasant. I do apologize for the late hour. I believe you found my dog. He gestured, with his head towards the retriever, who was now sitting patiently at his feet, looking up at him. Oh, yeah, he was out in the storm. A relief making me feel foolish for ever being scared. Glad you found him. The tall man's smile widened, stretching his face in a way that felt unnatural. He has a habit of getting out. He's a bit of a rascal. He leaned forward, his eyes darkened and unblinking, locking into mine. But he's very good at his job. My blood ran cold. His job? The man chuckled. A dry, rustling sound. He reached down and patted the dog's head. Of course, his gaze never leaving mine. His job is to find the kindest person in the neighborhood. He straightened up, his towering frame seeming to block all of the light from the porch. Thank you so much for your hospitality, his smile finally reaching his eyes, which now glinted with a terrifying, hungry light. He likes you very much. He's decided he wants you to meet the rest of the family. My mind screamed at me to slam the door. Slam it, lock it, and run. But my body wouldn't obey. I was a statue, my hand frozen on the door. The man's smile never faltered as he gave the door a gentle push. The brass security chain didn't snap or break. It stretched, elongating like taffy with a soft, metallic groan before falling away, limp and useless. There now, he said pleasantly. That's much better. He didn't enter. He simply took a step back and gestured with an open palm towards the street. It wasn't a command, it was an invitation. And for reasons I can't explain, I found myself stepping out onto the porch. The golden retriever trotted ahead of us, its tail held high. The air was different out here. The storm had washed everything clean, but the world felt muted, like I was looking at it through a pane of smoked glass. The streetlights casted long, distorted shadows that seemed to writhe and twist at the edges of my vision. As we walked, I noticed other things. A sleek black cat emerged from beneath a hedge, its eyes glowing with a faint phosphorescence. It fell into step beside the retriever. A few houses down, a parent was perched on a mailbox. It didn't squawk or speak, it just swiveled its head, tracking our progress in perfect silence. They were all moving with us, an honored guard of silence, watchful animals. I looked at the house we passed. Through their big picture window, I could see my neighbors. They were frozen in place, like mannequins in elaborate dioramas. One family was sitting around a table, forks raised halfway to their mouth, Another house of man was stopped mid-strike, one foot hovering over the other. They were all facing our direction, their faces blank, their eyes wide and vacant. Don't mind them, noticing my gaze. They're very good at following the rules. We were heading back to the end of the cul-de-sac, to the oldest house on the block, a large colonial that had been dark and seemingly empty since I'd moved in. As we got closer, I could feel a low vibration through the soles of my shoes, a deep hum that seemed to emanate from the house itself. The golden retriever led the precision up the walkway and sat patiently before the heavy oak door. The other animals formed a silent semicircle behind us, their eyes all fixed on me. The tall man walked through the door. It swung open before he touched it, revealing nothing but a deep, impenetrable darkness inside. The low hum grew louder, resonating in my bones. It sounded like a purr, a gigantic, hungry purr. The man turned to me, his smile as wide and terrifying as ever. He gestured into the blackness. After you. They've been so looking forward to this. She's humming again. Not a real song, just 3 broken notes. The same ones, off-key, repeating, over and over like a fucked up lullaby she made just to drive nails into my brain. She knows I hear it. She hums louder when I try to drown it out. She's in her room, right now, door wide open, sitting on the edge of her bed, staring at the wall, not moving, not blinking. She's been like that for, I don't know how long. Time's slippery lately. I should explain, or maybe I shouldn't, I don't know. My daughter, her name is Mia. She's 8. At least, she was. I called her name last night. Mia! Just like always. I wasn't even thinking. She turned, real slow, and said, "That's not what I'm called now." Then she smiled. And it wasn't a human smile. It wasn't hers. It looked like someone who had seen a smile once and was trying to recreate it using the wrong muscles. Like the idea of smiling was floating somewhere behind her eyes, but nothing connected right. It made my stomach twist. I didn't say anything. I walked away. That's kind of a theme lately. This didn't start last night. Or last week. It's been, I don't know, a while. Too long. My head doesn't work like it used to. Things smear together when I try to rewind. She used to draw, consistently. Little stick people, cats, bright suns with sunglasses, that kind of shit. Her art was all over the fridge, all over the walls. She was obsessed with coloring. Now she just sits, or hums, or stands outside in the rain and doesn't blink. No jacket, no shoes, cold mud up to her knees. I asked once, "Why are you still sitting out here?" She looked up at me, face soaked, hair plastered to her forehead, and said, "Because I don't get cold anymore." I tried to laugh. "Oh yeah, since when?" She didn't laugh. Didn't even smile that time. She just said, "Since I stopped being her." It's the little shit that eats away at you. She doesn't blink unless she remembers to. She eats, but only if I put food in front of her. She walks too lightly, like her feet aren't quite touching the ground. She talks differently now. Her voice still sounds like a little girl's, but it's wrong. Like it's reading off a script. No emotion, no rhythm, no connection between the words. It's like watching a puppet talk after the puppeteer cut the strings. Sometimes she calls me Dad. Sometimes she says him. Once she called me host. I didn't ask what that meant. I didn't want the answer. 3 nights ago, I woke up and she was standing next to my bed. I didn't hear her walk in. The floor didn't creak. She was just there. Her face maybe a foot away from mine. eyes wide open, too wide. They were black. No whites, no pupils, just bottom was black. Like tar, like sinkholes in her skull. I bolted upright so hard I nearly fell off the bed. She didn't move, didn't blink, didn't react. She just said,
You shouldn't have buried her so deep.
I told myself I didn't know what that meant. But I did. I remembered the lake. I don't want to write this part. I don't. But it won't stop clawing at the back of my skull. I wake up with blood in my mouth from gritting my teeth. Last summer, Mia went missing for 4 hours. We were out by the lake, like we always did every summer. A little trail in the woods. I was on a bench, scrolling my phone. She was picking flowers. I looked up. She was gone. Not a sound, not a scream, just gone. I ran. I screamed her name. I tore up and down the trail until my throat bled. Called the cops. Search dogs, neighbors, the whole fucking cavalry. Nothing. And then, 4 hours later, she walked out of the woods, barefoot, soaked, but smiling. She said,
I went in the water, but it wasn't cold.
they checked her. Not a scratch, no bruises, just wet. They told me kids wander, but my daughter wouldn't have wandered. Not like that. And she wouldn't have come back smiling. And she wouldn't have said what she said next.
Do we still have ice cream at home?
Like nothing happened. Like the woods didn't swallow her and spit out something else. Now I don't think she ever came back. I don't think what walked out of the trees that day was her. I think I know what I did. I can't say it. Not yet. But she keeps saying things. I played her favorite song once. The one she used to dance to as a baby. Itsy Bitsy Spider. I did the hand motions just to see if she remembered. She stared through me like I was a stranger on a subway. And then she whispered,
He's not in the drain anymore.
I asked her what that meant.
He lives in me now.
Tonight's the worst it's been. She's standing in the hallway again, neck twisted, head tilted like a dog that hears something high-pitched. Her mouth is twitching, jaw moving like it's chewing on something invisible. Her hands are clenched. She hasn't blinked in maybe 10 minutes, just standing there, watching, waiting. For what? I can't sleep. I won't. Because I know if I blink too long, she'll be closer. She doesn't want to pretend anymore. She doesn't need to. She knows I remember. If anyone finds this, if I go missing, if there's blood on the walls or my face on the news, just know I didn't hurt her. She was already gone. She's not my daughter. Not anymore. She never came back from that lake. I think maybe I put her there. I think maybe I had to. And now, something else is here. In her place in my house, in her clothes. That's watching me type this right now. I don't know what I'm doing posting this to a damn internet forum, but I need to get it out somehow. Maybe writing it all down and posting it online will help. I doubt it, but it's worth a shot. Here goes nothing. My name's Daniel Mathis. I used to be a detective, but I retired 2 months back. Well, maybe retired isn't the right word. Forced to quit is more like it. Either way, I'm not on the force anymore. That's enough about me, though. If I'm going to tell this story properly, then I need to start at the beginning. The very beginning. It started 20 years ago. A child went missing. a little boy, only 10 years old. His name was Johnny. I'd worked on a few missing person cases before, but this one was different. Johnny was walking back from school with some of his friends. It was getting dark, so he decided to take a shortcut through the woods. His friends were too scared to follow, so Johnny went alone. Needless to say, he never made it home. His parents reported him missing a few hours later. We searched the area for days. We questioned every sex offender in a 15-mile radius. Hell, we combed through every inch of that damn forest, but we never found him. Whoever took Johnny was smart about how they did it. They knew how to cover their tracks. It was almost like the kid vanished into thin air. Flash forward a month to mid-January, and I'm knocking on his parents' front door. It was snowing that day. I remember Paul, the kid's father, answered the door. He looked tired, as if he hadn't slept in weeks. Despite this, he still made an effort to be polite. He gave me a wary smile and shook my hand.
Detective Mathis, come in. My wife's in the living room.
His wife, Erin, was sitting with her back to me, staring at the TV. On the screen was a recording of Johnny, taken a couple months before he had disappeared. It was grainy and blurry, the way home videos are. He had bright orange hair, freckles, and green eyes, just like his mother. In the video, he was dressed in a puffy jacket and playing around in a pile of leaves. It must have been taken from their front yard.
Mommy, watch this!
He yelled, getting a running start before leaping headfirst into the pile of leaves, stray foliage clinging to his hair.
Wow, sweetie.
Erin's voice said from behind the camera. Johnny flashed a beaming smile, showing off the gap between his front teeth before preparing to jump into the leaves once again. I stood in the doorway to the living room, watching the video unfold. Once it reached its end, Erin started it from the beginning. It was only a few seconds long. She gazed into the TV, rubbing her necklace with her thumb, silently whispering along.
Dear,
Paul said, shaking her from her trance.
Detective Mathis is here.
Erin looked over and paused the video.
Please, take a seat.
Paul said, gesturing to a chair. Both he and Erin sat on the couch across from me, his hands holding hers as I started to speak.
Mr. and Mrs. McLean, I'm sorry, but I'm afraid that it is not good news. We have to call off the search for Johnny.
Erin broke down immediately, sobbing into her hands. Paul squeezed his eyes shut, trying to stop himself from doing the same. To be honest, I felt like crying as well.
I fought to keep it going for as long as I possibly could, but, well, Johnny's been missing for a month now, and we've run out of leads. We're going to keep the case open, but until any new evidence comes to light, well, there's nothing we can do.
The living room was filled with the sounds of Erin's wails. Paul tried his best to comfort her, but he was barely keeping it together himself.
You promised.
Erin started to shout.
You promised you would bring him home. Mrs. McLean, I am trying. Why can't you bring him home?
She rose to her feet and stormed upstairs, leaving Paul and I alone in the living room.
I'm sorry. I really am.
I muttered, unable to look him in the eye. Paul wiped the tears away from his face before rising to his feet.
I think you should leave.
I looked up at him, opening my mouth to say something, but no words came out. I simply nodded my head and rose to my feet. Paul was barely fighting back his tears as I left. As soon as I shut the door behind me, I could hear him break down and start to sob. Paul and Erin both died 15 years later. Paul started drinking and never stopped. Erin drove her car off a bridge in the middle of the night and drowned. I don't think they ever forgave me. Not really. To them, I was always the detective that failed to bring their child home. It was the 20th anniversary of the kid's disappearance, December 5th, when I came home to a letter. It had no return address or any distinguishing features. It was just a plain white envelope. There was no way it could have been delivered by a mailman. Someone dropped it off personally. I still have it somewhere, but I don't need to read it again to remember what it said. The words are braided into my brain like a hot iron. I sat at my dining room table, cut the envelope open, and started to read. Dear Detective Mathis, if things were different, I would have written this letter to Johnny's parents. I regret that I never got the opportunity to explain this to them. I know they never would have been able to understand, but I would have liked to explain it regardless. Enough about that though. With them gone, I have decided that the only one worthy of my confession is you. I watched you search for me, you know? I watched your interviews on the news. I watched as every lead you had went cold. In fact, I've seen you in person. You wouldn't have noticed me. I would have been just another face in the grocery store or on the street, but I noticed you. I always noted you, Detective Mathis. I am sure you have figured it out by now, but I am the one who took Johnny. I am the one who snatched him away in the woods 20 years ago. I still remember how I lured him to my car. I remember how I knocked him unconscious. I remember how much I was shaking. I want you to know that I never touched him. Not like that, anyways. I want that to be known. On the back of this letter are coordinates. Follow them, and more will be revealed. And if you tell the police about this, you will be throwing away your only chance to do right by Johnny. No more mysteries. No more games. It's time you learn why I did what I did. I sat there, reading and rereading that letter for what felt like hours. There were two possibilities. Either the person who took Johnny 20 years ago really had sent me a letter confessing his guilt, or someone was messing with me. And I really did not know which one was worse. I flipped the letter over and looked at the coordinates, careful not to touch the paper too much. If this really was written by the person who took Johnny, I want to preserve the prints. Staring at the coordinates, my first instinct was to call the station, but then another thought came into my mind. I knew that if I showed up with the other cops, and the guy who took Johnny was there, he'd just get arrested. If I went by myself, I knew I could give him what he really deserved. No witnesses, no one to stop me from putting a bullet in his head. Besides, I could have just said it was self-defense. This man put Johnny's parents through hell. I wasn't just about to pass up the opportunity to put him in the ground. I took a picture of the coordinates and plugged them into Google Maps. It was about a 30-minute drive, located deep in woods, outside of town. I threw on my coat, grabbed my gun, and raced out to my car. I'm surprised I didn't get pulled over with how fast I was going. As I sped down the interstate, the leather on my steering wheel creaked beneath my grip. My knuckles turned white, and I caught myself gritting my teeth together. I thought about what that letter said, how he bragged about seeing me in public. How many times had I walked past this guy? How many times have I passed someone on the street corner, and that someone was him? I wasn't a cop at this point. I didn't have my badge or my lights on. I was just angry and ready to kill a man. Eventually, I turned onto an old dirt road. I followed the directions until I came upon a trail into the woods. Parking the car, I grabbed a flashlight from my glove box and stepped out. It was twilight, and the forest was quiet, blanketed beneath a thick layer of snow. Not even the birds were making a sound. It was that kind of silence you only find in the dead of winter. As I trudged through the woods, I only became more furious.
I imagined what it must have been like when Johnny was brought here. A million questions raced through my mind. Was he unconscious as he was dragged through the snow? Was he even alive? Did he leave a trail of blood, or was he tightly wrapped in a garbage bag? The coordinates took me off the trail and deep into the woods. I didn't even consider if I was going to be able to find my way back. I only had one thing in my mind. Finally, I reached the coordinates, only to find nothing. It was just a small clearing. Snow-covered ground, bare trees, and the dark sky hanging above. I shined my light around, desperately searching for something, anything. I double-checked my phone to make sure I was at the right spot. I was. Stumbling over to a dead log laying up against a small hill, I sat down. I buried my face into my hand and wiped away a few tears as my breath disappeared into the clouds of vapor. The snow came up to my ankles, and the cold seeped through my boots. I slammed my fist down into the decaying wood. I did it again, and again. I shot up to my feet and spun around, screaming into the empty forest as I furiously stomped down the log, the dry wood splintering and cracking beneath my boot as I yelled every profanity I could think of. After what must have been my 10th kick, my foot broke through the hollow log and slammed into something behind it. Something metal. I stumbled back, my foot throbbing in pain. Shining my light through the newly formed hole in the log, I saw a rusted metal surface hiding beneath it. I frantically rolled the log aside, the wood breaking apart as I revealed what was underneath. Brushing the snow aside, I realized that what I was staring at was the entrance to a bunker. My breathing was heavy as I tugged on the latch. To my surprise, it was unlocked. The heavy door groaned as I swung it open. I was greeted with stone steps leading down into the dark. Shining my light, I saw just how deep this bunker was. It must have gone down 10 or 15 feet before the steps finally stopped and gave way to an unlit hallway. Drawing my gun, I took a deep breath and started down the steps. Leaving a trail of snow and mud behind me, I reached the bottom of the stairs and shined my light down the hallway. At the end of the hall was a large metal door. My own breath was deafening as I approached. Against the wall next to the door was a dial, holding my flashlight in the crook of my neck. I turned it. I flinched as some sort of intercom screeched on, blaring an old and grainy rendition of When Johnny Comes Marching Home. It began with deafening drums and an ear-piercing whistle before giving way to cacophony of voices. Stuffing my gun into my holster, I clasped my hands over my ears as the sound of the entire choir echoed through the bunker. Pushing the metal door open, I stumbled into the room beyond and frantically looked for the source of the music. At the far end of the room was a computer with multiple monitors, one of which was hooked up to a loudspeaker. I grabbed the wire and ripped it out of the speaker, abruptly stopping the music. With the song no longer playing, I looked around to get a feel for my surroundings. I was in a concrete room with low ceilings and flickering fluorescent lights. It was like an old hospital ward. The counters were populated by scalpels, operating tools of various sizes, and syringes. In the center of the room was an operating table adorned with leather straps. The whole room smelled like rubbing alcohol. The lights in the ceiling did a poor job at illuminating things, making the whole bunker feel claustrophobic and suffocating. The walls on the left were like something you would see in a mystery film. Hundreds of pieces of paper pinned to a notice board. Some of them had notes furiously scribbled down in handwriting I could barely decipher. Others, however, looked like printed off images of star systems. A picture of the Milky Way hung next to an old newspaper clipping from 20 years ago that read, "Strange lights spotted in the night sky." The wall opposite of that was, in fact, not a wall, but rather a glass divider, separating this section from the room from whatever was beyond it. Behind the glass was a thick blue mist, so dense that I couldn't even begin to see what was on the other side.
"Johnny! Are you here?"
I shouted, running up to the glass and trying to peer through. Stepping back, I looked around the room in search of something to break the glass. That's when I saw it. On one of the computer screens
was a recording titled, "For Mavis." Approaching the screen, I moved the mouse over it and clicked play.
Hello, Detective Mathis.
My grip on my gun tightened when I finally heard his voice. For 20 years, I had imagined what this monster sounded like. Finally, hearing it felt surreal. The voice was slightly garbled by a modulator, but I could still tell that he was around my age, mid-60s at most.
If you're listening to this, then you read my letter. If you were hoping to arrest me, or maybe even kill me, I'm sorry to disappoint you. I have taken exhaustive steps to cover my tracks. Even if you manage to find my identity, I will be long gone by then.
I clenched my jaw. Imagining how satisfying it would feel to choke him out.
I am sure you have many questions, and I think that this recording will answer most of them. But before I can explain anything, I think it's best to introduce you to someone.
With that, the chamber behind the glass divider began to hiss. The fog quickly dissipated, and the room beyond was revealed. I don't think I'll ever be able to forget what I saw when the mist fully cleared. I still see it every time I close my eyes. Every time I fall asleep, I see that thing. On the other side of the glass, there was, I don't even know what to call it. It looked vaguely humanoid, but its limbs were more skin to an arachnid. Countless fingers, with numerous joints, sprawled forth from its palms like a spider web. Its skin was brown and covered in a thick layer of slime that dripped down onto the floor. Its emaciated torso was hollow, its ribs curling outward to form a central cavity that bellowed slightly as the thing quietly breathed.
Detective Mathis,
The recording said.
Meet the Basilisk. Whether that is its true name or simply what it had chosen to be called is beyond me.
As my eyes traveled over to the creature's horribly misshapen, grotesque form, I saw something that made my heart sink into my stomach. Encased within its open rib cage was a body. It was small, frail, and wrapped in a cocoon of sinew. It dripped with a strange fluid, and parts of its discolored skin seemed to be merging with the creature itself. Taking a step towards the glass, I let out a quiet gasp when I saw the strands of orange hair hanging from its scalp. Johnny. To my horror, one of his eyes fluttered open, his irises bloodshot. He looked at me for a split second before his pupil rolled back into his head, and he started to thrash out. He was alive. He was fucking alive. Through the glass, I could hear horrible, excruciating groans. I pray I never have to hear anything like that again. They reverberated off the walls of the bunker. The choked sobs of a child crying not because he is sad or because he needs attention, but because he's in pain. I pressed my hand against the glass and I fought back tears as I watched Johnny, the boy I thought had been dead for 20 years, writhe in agony before my eyes. Suddenly, his screams were overpowered by a large groan. A strange clicking noise filled the room as the many elongated fingers of the basilisk began to twitch. After a few seconds, Johnny's muffled screams were silenced. His eyes fluttered shut, and he went still. As he stopped moving, so did the basilisk. Johnny! 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 I screamed, pounding on the glass. Neither he nor the creature responded.
Incredible, isn't it? The Basilisk came to me 20 years ago. Its spacecraft descended from the stars before my very eyes.
I was barely listening to the recording at this point. My eyes were fixated on Johnny as he laid motionless inside the creature's chest.
Do you want to know the interesting part, Detective Mathis? When it came to me, I was a dying man. Brain cancer, stage 4. Inoperable.
His voice seemed sullen before perking up as he continued.
The basilisk cured me. I should have died years ago, but it halted my tumor in its tracks.
I began to look around the room, searching for any way into this chamber, but I found nothing. Johnny was completely sealed off.
Can you see it? The fluid it is secreting? In that fluid lies the cure to cancer. Can you imagine a world where we do not have to fear such a horrid fate? The enzymes in that fluid were the key. I knew that if I could isolate them, learn how to replicate it, I could make cancer a thing of the past, and the basilisk was willing to help me.
The voice paused for a second, and I could hear the man let out a sigh.
Except, it needed something from me. It wanted a child.
I've replayed that part in my head more times than I care to admit. It never fails to make me sick.
The basilisk is a creature of the abstract. It feeds off features that never were. And there is no one who has more potential or imagination with the future as a child. Johnny is alive in there. The basilisk is keeping him alive, keeping his psyche trapped in the body of a child, dreaming of a future he never had. I know your first instinct will probably be to pull him out, but that won't save him. The basilisk has been feeding off of Johnny for 20 years. They are merged in body and mind. If you separate them, they both die.
I started to cry. I stumbled back and leaned against the operating table, unable to peel my eyes away from the glass. The voice sighed deeply.
I know you think I'm a monster, Detective Mathis, but I stand by what I've done. Do you know why?
He sounded arrogant, so damn smug.
Because I figured out how to replicate the enzymes. In a few years, I will have a cure to every type of cancer there is. Do you know how many children die of cancer every year? Nearly 100,000. Nearly 2 million children have died in agony since I first took Johnny. Since I gave him to the basilisk. I had to do this. I have a duty to save as many as I can. And the basilisk never would have helped me if I haven't given it a child. I sacrificed one so I could save millions. No matter how hard I tried, I could not look away from the display on the other side of the glass for more than a few seconds. The otherworldly, incomprehensible, twisted form of the basilisk. Johnny's nearly unrecognizable body, trapped within. If I had gone to the government,
The voice began again.
they would have locked it beneath the Pentagon. They would have tortured it, and if they ever realized the good it could do, they would have only given it to the rich. The 1% of the 1%. The corrupt, the greedy, and the perverted.
I could hear the anger and the bitterness in his voice.
I'm going to give this cure to everyone, not just the wealthy. Soon, cancer will be a distant memory. Johnny has made a necessary sacrifice. His suffering has led to an unprecedented leap in medicine.
As the recording continued, I approached the glass, looking at the emaciated husk huddled within the chest cavity. His eyes opened again, only for a second. He looked around the room, seeming to follow the web of fingers clinging to the ceiling. In the seconds before he shut his eye again, I could see Johnny's pain, his fear.
Now, the way I see it, you have a few options. You could call your precinct, but that would be foolish. If you show them the basilisk, the CIA won't be far behind. If they don't kill you, they will brainwash you into never speaking of this again. They will take both the basilisk and Johnny away for study. He will remain in the living hell, and it will be your fault.
I looked down at the gun in my hand, rubbing my thumb over the black metal.
Your second option is to kill them.
the recording said. Even though I knew they were coming, I felt my heart sink into my stomach as he said those words.
I trust you brought your gun. The glass is not bulletproof, and neither is the basilisk. Just a few shots is all it should take. I am no fool. I know that if the basilisk is left unattended, it will eventually leave the bunker and begin searching for other children. Just like any other junkie. The high will wear off, and it will start searching for the next one. I could not bring myself to end its life. I worked with it so many years. It is practically my colleague.
For the first time since the recording began, I detected a hint of compassion in his voice.
So, it is up to you, Detective Mathis. You can put Johnny out of his misery and walk away. You can be satisfied knowing that you ended his suffering the only way you could. Alternatively, you could notify the government. You could risk your own life and doom Johnny to who knows how many more years of agony. You are a pragmatic man, much like myself. I trust you will make the correct decision.
And with that, the recording was over. I was left in the bunker with nothing but the hum of fluorescent lights and the horrible abomination on the other side of the glass. Looking up from my gun, I saw Johnny staring at me. Not only with one eye, but both. Tears trickled down his cheek as he gazed at me, his eyes pleading for something. I don't know what was going through his mind. I'm not even sure if he was still capable of thought after 20 years of torment. After a few seconds, the basilisk's fingers twitched again, and Johnny was pulled back into his slumber. I looked down at my gun again. My hand was trembling. A few minutes later, I stepped out of the bunker and into the cold night. The chill nipped through my skin, and the barrel of my gun was still smoking. A light snow began to fall as I sat down on a hollow log. I began to sob. I wiped at my eyes, but the tears kept coming.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
I cried. As I wept, I felt my gun's weight in my hand, 2 bullets lighter than when I had arrived.
We were traveling and stopped in a ratty old town and got a room in their ratty old hotel. It was more stale than scary. I was so tired I couldn't even bring myself to watch TV. I lay atop the blankets because I'm always wary of covering myself with hotel blankets. It's like crawling into a used human cocoon. I fell asleep fast though. My wife, evidently, did not. A few hours or so later, I don't really know how long, I woke up to her fussing around in the bathroom. Afterward, she left the room. She closed the door gently so as not to wake me. I figured she was grabbing something from the car, but 30 minutes passed and she still hadn't returned. I was starting to get worried and annoyed. I had to drive another 7 hours in the morning. I turned on the light. There was a low hum of the vents, but it was otherwise silent. Her phone and the room key were missing, but the car keys were still there. So she hadn't left the building, or if she had, she went on foot. But where would she even go? I called her, and she didn't answer. I texted her, but it read, "Lucy, beloved wife." I silenced her notifications. I opened the door, and the electronic mechanism made its sound. I peered down the hallway, and there was no one on either side. Now the irritation was crawling up my skin. How selfish of her. Didn't she know I had to drive in the morning? Didn't she consider that? I found her in the lobby on the phone. She had hot tea in a paper cup. I said, "Lucy, Lucy," in a whisper hiss. She jumped. Oh, hi. What the hell are you doing? Talking with my sister? Why didn't you answer your phone? She took the phone away from her head and looked at it. Babe, sorry, I have my notifications silenced. I couldn't sleep, and I didn't want to wake you. Well, you woke me. Would it have been that hard just to send me a text? What was I supposed to think? I thought you were asleep. Well, I wasn't. You know I have to drive 7 hours tomorrow, right? Yes, babe, I'm sorry. I stormed back into the room, turned off the lights, and just laid there, fuming. Just go to sleep, I told myself. Just let it go. When I get all fired up, it's difficult for me to fall back asleep. Our argument continued in my head. How could you be so selfish? Now I'm going to be sleep deprived, which is dangerous. The whole ride there. 7 hours of driving without enough sleep. Could she for once in her life consider me? Then the door opened. She was back. She left the lights off and slipped into bed with me. I tried to resist saying something, and I managed to for a couple minutes. But then I said, you know, this is kind of selfish of you, right? Whatever, Dave, she said. Wow. Whatever. Wow. Then there was silence. Again. I tried to bite my tongue. I said, you really aren't going to say anything? Not even sorry? I already said sorry. No, you didn't. Yeah, I did. No, you didn't. Whatever. Well, considering how hard it is for you to just say it, I doubt that you actually did. Maybe you can just stop being a little whiny baby about it? That wasn't something she would normally say, and it made me even angrier. She's the one throwing insults? Her. When she was the one at fault, a beat of fury was pumping in my wrist. You've got to be kidding me, I said. I'm not being a whiny baby, I need enough sleep so I can drive. Do you want to drive? No, she said. You'll drive me. What the fuck is wrong with you? I married a useless man who cries like a little baby when he's tired. I was so livid, I was nearly speechless. Unless, I asked her, unless maybe you should reconsider that. She did. You're right, she said. You are useful sometimes for doing my bidding, like driving me tomorrow, to wherever it is we're going. Pathetic, perhaps, is the better word. Now I was speechless. This was unlike her, she continued. Do you think I actually think you're a good writer? Are you under the impression that your parents do? Somehow, you're holding this dream that you'll one day be discovered, that you're deeply talented, but just in the early days of your career. Please, everyone is lying to you. What the fuck is wrong with you? I turned on the light. She was already looking at me with this terrible smile on her face. She said, I can't even get through one of your stories. They're so bad. I wonder if you'll die still convinced that you're smart and talented. It was here that I noticed her teeth. They were black. I thought it was just the lighting, but then something else wasn't quite right. Something was wrong with her skin, like it was falling from the muscle, droopy and gray. She kept on smiling, and her right eye went wonky. It fell to the side like it was dead. She positioned it back into place with her finger. This was not my wife. When the thing realized that I knew, it started laughing harder and got out of bed and fled. Its limbs moved long. I chased it out into the hallway, but it was gone. Somehow, it evaporated or climbed into the vent ceiling. I ran downstairs. My wife was still in the lobby. I embraced her.
For context, my grandmother lives deep in the middle of nowhere. Her house is on a secluded peninsula, surrounded by a lake. The closest store is a 15-minute drive, and her neighbors, they only come up in the summer. In December, it's just her, and, in this case, me. She and my grandfather were heading to Tennessee for a week and asked me to house sit and take care of the animals. I agreed. I was 17 at the time, and honestly I thought I'd enjoy the peace and quiet. They packed up their things and left around 10 p.m. After they drove off, I got comfortable, turned on the TV, and settled in. Around midnight, I started getting sleepy, and I decided to head to bed. Let me explain the layout quickly. The house is all one level, no basement, no upstairs. You walk through the front door into the living room, the kitchen is to the left, and to the right, on the other side of the living room, is a hallway that leads to 3 bedrooms and 1 bathroom. My room was at the very end of the hall, and from the bed, I had a clear view of the living room. I turned off the lights. went to my room, and laid down. Chula, my grandma's black lab, hopped up beside me. She's the sweetest dog you'll ever meet, obsessively friendly. She loves people, never growls, and is always wagging her tail at strangers. She's just pure love in dog form. A few hours passed. I had just drifted off to sleep when I heard my grandmother's voice.
Leah, can you come help me?
My eyes shot open. I sat up slowly and called out.
Grandma,
No answer.
what do you need help with?
Silence. Then, a few seconds later, I heard it again. Louder this time.
Leah, I need help.
I thought I was dreaming. I sat all the way up, staring at the door. A few seconds passed, then I heard a low guttural growl. I turned to look at Chula. She had sat up straight, hair raised, staring into the hallway with her teeth bared. She growled low, deep in her throat, eyes fixed on something I couldn't see. I turned on the hallway light and peeked out. Nothing there. No movement. I walked over and I looked out the window next to my bed since it faced the driveway. Her car wasn't there. I quickly shut the window and locked my bedroom door. My heart was pounding. This was an old house. Every step creaked. I should have heard something, but there was nothing but silence. I grabbed my phone and tried to call my grandma. It went straight to voicemail. I called my mom, trying to sound calm, but my voice was shaking. I asked her if grandma had come back for some reason. She said no. Then the knocking started, but not at the front door. It was right on my bedroom door. Heavy, slow, and deliberate. And here's what chilled me to my core. The voice was still coming from the living room.
Leah, please come help me.
It didn't make sense. I could hear her calling from the other end of the house while the knocks were right outside my door. She kept calling me, each time more irritated. The calmness was gone. Now it was commanding, aggressive.
Leah, let me in. I need your help. Leah, open this door. Leah, now!
It sounded like her, but distorted, like something trying to copy her voice and getting it almost right. Chula stayed pressed to my side, growling steadily and low, like she'd rip something apart if it got in. The shotgun was in the same room with me, locked in the gun safe in the corner. I knew the code, if I needed it, but I didn't even move from the bed. I couldn't. I was frozen. Eventually, the knocking stopped. The voice faded. I must have fallen asleep somehow, because the next thing I knew, sunlight was pouring in through the blinds. For a minute, I almost convinced myself I had imagined the whole thing, but when I checked my phone, the call logs were still there. I had really called my mom. I really had called my grandma. That part was real. I tried to push it out of my head and told myself it was some kind of sleep paralysis or dream. Around 11 p.m., I had just got out of the hot tub in the garage. The door was wide open. There was no one around for miles, so I hadn't bothered to close it. Then I heard it. The motion sensor went off with that sharp barking alert. A second later, something slammed really loud in the garage, like someone knocked over a metal shelf or kicked a wall. I hit the garage remote and shut the door fast, heart racing. Not long after, maybe 30 minutes after I got back into the house, there was a knock at the front door. I crept towards the door, standing just far away enough to not be seen through the frosted glass. I didn't move. I didn't speak. That's when I heard her.
Please, let me in. I'm cold. I'm hungry.
The voice was scratchy, like an older woman, soft but weirdly flat. I didn't answer at first. I stood there, frozen, heart pounding. After a few seconds, I said, loud enough to carry,
How did you get all the way out here?
silence. Then more knocking, louder, quicker. He spoke again, more forcefully.
I said let me in. I need help.
I backed away from the door, still trying to stay calm.
You can't just show up at people's houses. You need to leave.
That's when the knocking changed. It wasn't knocking anymore, it was banging,
fast, heavy, and aggressive. I ran to my room and punched in the code to the gun safe. Just as I grabbed the shotgun, she slammed the door open so hard it rattled in the frame. "Let me in, now!" The knocking had stopped, but I couldn't shake the feeling that she hadn't left. I was straining to hear anything. Footsteps, whispering, even breathing. But the house, it was dead silent. Not even the wind. Then her voice came again. Not right at the door this time. Off to the side. Almost like it was outside the window. "Leah, please. Let me in." It didn't move. She tried again. Louder. Sharper. "You're being rude. Open the door." I sat down in the recliner in the living room. Shotgun rested in my lap, facing the door. Chula lay tense at my feet. I gripped the shotgun tightly, eyes locked on the door. She circled the house. I could hear her moving from one side to the other, knocking on the kitchen door, then on the garage door, then back to the front. Her voice followed, same exact words, every time like a broken record. "I need your help, Leah. You're the only one here." She kept pacing around outside of the house, banging on doors, tapping windows, muttering things I couldn't quite hear. That's when it hit me. She called me by my name, and I never told her. I hadn't spoken to anybody outside. No way she should have known. I thought if she was supposed to be here, she'd use the keypad to get inside. She'd know the code. Nobody was supposed to be here. And yet, here she was. I sat in the living room, holding the shotgun, watching the door until the sky started to lighten and the birds began to sing. I never heard her leave. No footsteps, no car, no sound at all. When I stepped outside after sunrise to let the dog out, the ground was covered in a thin layer of snow, and it was untouched. No footprints, no tire marks, no trail leading to or from the doors, nothing. Just cold, clean silence. Later that morning, I called my aunt and I begged her to come stay with me. I didn't even try to explain. I just told her I couldn't be there alone for another night. She showed up that evening, and I almost cried with relief. For the first time in 2 days, I felt like I could breathe. That night, I finally was able to get the sleep I desperately needed. I will never stay there alone again.